パンツだ。どこに。ステイ。あ、ごめん。
Episode 14 for The Dangers in My Heart has just dropped, and you might as well just simply call this episode Anna Yamada's Payback. This time, it's personal and romantic.
だから。返し。
Hi there everyone, Lars back again with another anime review brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. Now this episode was kind of an interesting one to get because not a whole lot happened. In terms of the advancement of the plot, we didn't really get a whole lot of that. And even in terms of character development, it's not like we got a whole lot, but what we did get was actually really good. Buried under all of the fluff and stuff and all of the typical shenanigans, tropes, and situations that you would expect coming out of a rom-com anime when two people who have feelings for each other, who are in love, end up alone at someone's house. Now, then, one of these days, we're going to have to do a breakdown of all of the silly rom-com tropes that anime uses and really how effective they are, because it felt a little bit too hammed up in this episode, while other stuff landed pretty well. But to kind of cut to the chase right here, after the previous episode where Ichikawa's helped Yamada find her little keychain out in the snow, she has brought him back home to warm him up, sticking him into her own bathtub, and all kinds of awkwardness and weirdness ensues. They then share a hot pot together after troubles with Ichikawa getting dressed and Yamada's little dog almost depantsing him. Oh boy, just tighten it up. That's what the strings are there for, boy. Just cinch them up a little bit and then you don't have to worry about the dog pulling down your pants. But they share a hot pot meal before Yamada's mother shows up, and Ichikawa has to be shoved under the blanket, pretend to be Chi and be sick so that way he can sneak on out. But the big thing that happens right here is that Yamada begins opening up a lot to Ichikawa, expressing her, not just her past, but the fears that have built up in her because of her past, because of how many times she has failed in doing something that she loves, and she fears that she might eventually just become a burden on the people who love her because she just keeps on failing. Now, this might seem like a bit much considering that Yamada right now has what seems to be a pretty good modeling gig, and she has offers to act and everything, and as a little spoiler for later on in the season, we're going to see that she's going to get yet more offers, which will be pretty important, pretty big for her. So she actually has a fairly nice beginning career outside of school. But because of all those failures in her life, she has been conditioned to believe that she will fail. And because of her own pride, her own insecurities, she hates it when someone is able to do something better than her, especially if they began long after she did. It just, again, reinforces this sense of inadequacy. And so that has built up this inner fear, which she is very brave in telling Ichikawa this, but it's also her way of basically saying, look, when you tried to distance yourself from me earlier, I thought it was that you no longer cared for me in any kind of way, that I had done something wrong, that someone who was important to me no longer cared for me, and that just kind of solidified one of my greatest anxieties, one of my greatest irrational fears. And Ichikawa was like, oh dang, yes I did, and tries to make up for it, though again he himself is not entirely honest about it because, well, that does harken back to his own warped, twisted sense of how he perceived himself. This all comes back to the title of the show overall, The Dangers in My Heart. Right here with these two characters, in this moment where they are alone together and Yamada is just spilling all of her guts, this is incredibly important because it's not just Ichikawa who is dealing with all of his misconceptions, with his twisted thoughts, with his misconceptions of what on earth is happening in the world where he is and everything like that. It's also Yamada. And facing that stuff down, especially as a young teenager, that's really scary. That's really hard to do. And it's not necessarily easy without the experience of a longer life and without maybe an adult there to help guide them through this. It's also very easy to run to the wrong conclusion, which we see Ichikawa doing in this moment where he doesn't fully understand that Yamada is opening up to him. Why? Because she likes him. At best, he believes we're just friends, which sucks for me because I like her, but she only sees me as a friend. Dang it! And I already know because of people commenting in the previous video being all like, dude, they're already together. Oh, no, they're not. And part of it is because Ichikawa just cannot conceive of a reality in which a girl like Yamada likes a boy like him. And that comes down to the fact that he convinced himself that he was someone else entirely. And sure, that armor from the previous season has been coming down, but he has conditioned himself. It is far harder to reverse that conditioning, that way of thinking, than it is to open up and be humble and honest with other people. This episode shows us still just how far these two have to go in order to actually get together. And while Yamada was being blunt, very open, I mean, she's sharing all the stuff about her past. She is basically, again, being like a blunt instrument, like a hammer, hammering Ichikawa, letting him know, I like you and I want to have a connection with you. I want to be able to share everything about myself with you. I hope that you will do the same for me. Well, just bringing up again a hammer is a beautiful, excellent tool, and it's very straightforward. However, if you miss the nail head, it doesn't matter how good of a swing it was, you don't put the nail in where you're supposed to put it. And that's Yamada's problem right here, because this isn't just as simple as doing construction work, but that Yamada has to reach Ichikawa. Ichikawa has to be in the right kind of state of mind in order to accept what she is telling him. And so there's all kinds of miscommunication happening right here. So it doesn't matter how blunt Yamada is being if he's just not getting it and misconstruing everything as a result. And so while it might seem a little frustrating, this is why I actually do enjoy this episode, despite how slow it was and how little progress we seem to make, because this episode cements very clearly something that I brought up in my previous video, my previous review about The Dangers in My Heart Season 2. How are you going to extend the drama and the hilarity of these two who are now very close, not yet getting together? How are you going to drag it out for an entire season? This episode makes it very clear. Miscommunication and misunderstanding yourself and misunderstanding your relationship with other people is the reason why it's going to take these two an entire season still to get together. Now after that, we get brilliant setup for some great awkwardness that's going to happen later on when Ichikawa leaves the apartment wearing Yamada's tracksuit with her name on it, and he runs into Yamada's father, who looks like he could murder someone, like he's ready to murder someone, and he sees his daughter's tracksuit on this guy, this little shrimp who looks kind of weird and shifty that he hasn't seen before. Oh boy, this is going to get great. The rest of the episode is just your typical middle school shenanigans, Yamada getting more payback, which again is her being very blunt, trying to be all like, Ichikawa, like, I'm trying to let you know right here, and settling what she sees are some of the scores for him embarrassing her and putting her onto the back foot. This is just good, silly, fluffy whatnot. And that's one of the things that makes some of the weightier stuff within this episode flow so well, even with its incredibly slow pacing this episode, is the fact that we still got a lot of laughs, a lot of fluff and funny. But again, at the heart and at the very center of this episode, which is done very well, we get the message of what is happening between these two characters. And a good lesson that I think that any novice author can take away from this is that you don't need to exactly spell stuff out, especially if you're doing a rom-com or a drama. One of the things that brings out that dramatic aspect to these genres are the miscommunications, or how people misconstrue things, how they don't understand themselves and don't understand other people. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to halt the story and spell everything out for the audience and for the characters. That's not fun, that's not interesting, and that's tedious, and it robs you of all the great fun and interactions that you can have. However, slowing the story down is important to allow characters to have these more meaningful moments. So the two things that you want to do is this: you want to avoid spelling everything out for your readers or for your audience, and number two, you do want to at times slow things down and have that more intense interaction. However, make sure that you balance that out with speed, with funny, with action, with humor, whatever it is that you got to do, so that way it's not just a long, ponderous slog, because that's also very exhausting and not fun to read or watch. So that's all I've got to say for this episode of The Dangers in My Heart Season 2. I'm looking forward to yet more fun and shenanigans, more misunderstandings, and some hilarious stuff that's going to go down with Yamada's family later on in the story. Look forward to that. In the meantime, as we wait for the next episode to drop, if you'd like more analyses, reviews, writing insights, and all that good jazz, please check out our other videos here on our channel. And if you'd like to support the work that we do here, make sure that you check out in the link below the books that we ourselves have already published. That would really help us out a lot. But otherwise, thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing. And until Ichikawa and Yamada can really communicate with each other, tschüss.